With Trial of the Grand Crusader rapidly approaching, I figured now would be a good time to release a gearing guide for Discipline Priests. We will be covering 3 major categories today. The first is comparing the Trial tier set versus the Ulduar one, and if it's worth using. We'll then compare off pieces like trinkets, rings, necks, and others, and be discussing priorities, emblem uses, and other tips for this phase. A really quick note, I'll be sharing the Google Sheets page in the description and pinned comment, so feel free to check that out as a reference whenever you want. So, tier sets. While the TOGC tier set obviously has better stats due to its increased item level, it actually provides less overall spell power than the Ulduar tier set due to losing out on the 4-piece bonus of 250 spell power whenever you power with shield, which effectively comes out to 250 base spell power because, Discipline Priest is a one-button spammer class that takes no skill. Well, that's just according to other jealous healers. I wrote out all the individual stats that you will gain from each piece on the left here, and then wrote out any minor changes due to bonuses from gems in the middle, and then wrote out the effective differences from going from 5 pieces of tier 8 to tier 9. It comes out to 1,330 HP, 2,010 mana alongside 0.8% crit chance from the intellect. You get 88 spirit, which amounts to a small amount of MP5 with some talents. You lose 130 spell power due to the tier bonus that you're losing out on. You gain a little over 1% spell haste, and you also gain 1.22% crit chance from the crit, which alongside the intellect crit chance comes out to about 2% extra chance to crit with spells. Now, is this worth it? While it does include some nice bonuses, losing over 100 of your primary stat and also getting a useless tier set bonus and increased empowered renew alongside a small upgrade in your divine agents procs doesn't feel too great. The 2-set bonus is a 20% buff to Palm, which is great, especially if you don't have an H-Priest in your raid, as it definitely is stronger than the 10% crit to POH that comes from the tier 8 2-piece bonus. But you can't get 2 pieces of tier 9 and still run 4 pieces of tier 8. What you can do is take 1 piece of tier 9, as you can still preserve the 4-piece bonus for the rest of tier 8. I'd recommend the chest for its high overall stat increases and spell power, but the helm is another solid choice. Legs provide a lot of overall stats, but not as much spell power, and shoulders and gloves are kind of meh. You could also run something like Pharaoh Gloves if you got lucky enough to get that as a healer, but if not, definitely replace a higher item priority here. Going into off pieces, we will quickly run through each piece and list out how big of an upgrade it is, and then also talk about some notes I made for each of them. Okay, starting off with the neck, it's only a minor upgrade going from Charm of Meticulous Timing to Wail of the Valkyr. You do gain crit instead of MP5, which is really nice in this phase, as honestly a lot of the fights in TOGC aren't going to take much more than a few minutes, the only fight being a Nubarak, and that fight's going to be about 5 to 6 minutes if you're having multiple burrow phases. Realistically, not going to be a huge deal still though. If you're upgrading from Pendant of the Shallow Grave, it is a nice upgrade, but you're only gaining about 7 spell power. And you're obviously getting some minor increases in your crit and haste, and in the stamina and intellect as well. Not overall a great upgrade, but definitely something to improve if you haven't gotten a Charm of Meticulous Timing. But realistically, with that having the MP5, only healers are going to want it. So if your guild's still going to be running Ulduar and you get to something like that, it's not going to be one of your top priorities to go from Charm to Wail. Up next, we got the Cape. Obviously, Cape for every single class is pretty much going to be best because you're going from 252 item level to 272. That 20 item level increase is huge. You're getting 20 spell power here, effectively 25 because now you're getting that red socket bonus because obviously you're this priest, you're going to be using red gems, so you're getting that +5 from that as well. So overall, it's 25 spell power higher. You're gaining 20 crit, 5 stamina, and 16 intellect. And again, crit over MP5 at this point. You obviously might have to wait a while because, well, cloaks are going to be in high demand. You're only going to get 1 every week that you get a perfect run, so it's going to need to be, if you don't get other pieces of gear, you can probably kind of prioritize yourself to get the cloak. I'm going to do wrist and waist together here. Unfortunately, there aren't many pieces that have high spell power that don't have hit on them, so you're only going to gain a marginal amount of spell power while you're going to lose some optimization. These 2 pieces don't have spirit on them, however, so you are going to it's not really a huge loss in terms of that. Other than that, it's a minor upgrade for both of these. If you do have a weaker piece like a 232, definitely prior that over other pieces, especially if it's like Shackles of the Autolisk, which realistically you're probably going to have. Grasp of Reasons is pretty much wanted by most spellcasters, so healers aren't really going to get prioed for that. So if you are stuck with Shackles, it is a nice upgrade going from that to Binding. But with that, let's move on. With the feet, there are several options that you might already have before, whether that's Boots of Fire Resolution from Hard Mode Flame Leviathan, or Treads of the False Oracle, which is something that I use right now that drops off of Yogg. Starlight Treads is another option that can technically be used right now, but it is a weaker item level. Boots of the Morning Widow, though, provides haste and spell power and spirit, so it's going to be highly contested. So if you are stuck with something like Treads of the False Oracle right now, it's really not a huge upgrade. If anything, you're losing out on some optimization with the crit. All of that for 19, you're going to be getting 19 spell power off of that. and you're losing a little bit of stamina to gain a little bit of intellect. And then comparing with the Boots of Fire Resolution, which you're honestly only gaining 8 spell power from, it's really not going to be something you should be prioritizing there. Up next, we got rings. Rings in Ulduar are kind of weird, where a lot of the 10-man items were pretty much just about as good as some of the 25-man options in terms of itemization. So there really is a lot of options you could have here, whether that's Starshine Circle, Nebula Band, Fire Orchid Signet, or Signet of Lost Lament. The 258 items don't add a ton of spell power. They do kind of offer options that are like, Ring of the Dark Mender, which isn't going to be highly contested because of the MP5. It's pretty much a direct upgrade over Starshine Circle, but again, it's only a minor upgrade, so really I wouldn't be wasting, if you're on a Loot Council guild, I wouldn't be wasting a lot of, points on that, or like, your need rolls on that. And on the same one at GDKP, it shouldn't be highly contested, so after a few weeks, you should be good to kind of just take that without too much of a hassle. Band of Deplorable Violence, that's going to be kind of more highly contested by some of the spellcaster classes, like mages who want the crit, and then also like locks who want spirit. Like a demo lock's going to want this really well. It's also dropping off a Nubarak, so it's going to be something that might be gate kept if your guild's not able to clear it week 1 or 2. However, these are, they are upgrades. You're getting a little bit of spell power there, but it's really not a whole lot to write home about. Up next, we got Trinkets. Again, you'll be keeping Illustration of the Dragon Soul until Heroic ICC stuff starts to drop. It's just so strong with that base 200 spell power. Ideally, you're probably walking into TOGC with Show of Faith, as long as you've gotten down Yogg. It's giving you a great amount of spell power with 158. Obviously, Solace of the Defeated is what we might be upgrading to here. The reason for that is because the MP5 in particular becomes a lot more consistent on it. With Show of Faith, with the way Disc Priests work, where you're pre-shielding people before the fight begins, you're likely to have a lot of your procs already hit when you're not really actually wasting mana, because you're just pre-shielding people. So you're kind of wasting that initial proc, and then you're only gonna get about that once per minute with a 50-second cooldown and only a 10% chance to proc. While Solace of the Defeated also just provides better MP5 over time. Over an entire minute, you'll get 1728 mana from Solace, while you're only gonna get 816 mana from Show of Faith, and that's only if you don't get a proc until the fight actually starts. So, Solace of the Defeat is a really nice item. With that extra consistent MP5, you can definitely start to drop other pieces of gear that have MP5 in favor for pieces that have haste or crit on it. That definitely obviously is preferable in the long term, as those stats provide more throughput than something like MP5, which only is going to help you with sustain. So up next, we got weapons. No, the legendary is probably not realistic. Even if your guild's gotten out about 2 or 3 of these, you might be starting to go towards a DPS like a Boomkin or an S-Priest that can kind of use that. Misery's End also kind of is basically just about as good. The reason for that is the stats are all kind of lining up. You see the equal spell power. You're actually gaining more haste off Misery's End, as well as some stamina and intellect. You are getting a little bit more crit on Valinir and obviously getting that proc. However, if your guild already has 2 to 3 healers with it, they're going to start overwriting each other. And honestly, as a Discipline Priest, your heals don't hit for as much because it's more about preventative damage. So if anything, yours is kind of wasted in terms of that. So honestly, at this point, while it is technically BIS for your own individual output, I would honestly go with Misery's End. And even going for Misery's End over Constellus, you're gaining a good amount of spell power. You're gaining 36, which is pretty nice. Misery's End is probably going to be pretty contested at first, so you could go for something like that, but then you're going to be sacrificing other pieces. You're also losing out on a gem, so really it isn't even really 35 spell power. It's something closer to like half of that, especially with the new epic gems coming out. So really, I don't think it's as big of an upgrade. Other classes might view it as a bigger thing. They might take advantage of that crit and haste a bit more than Discipline Priest does. So honestly, as ironic as it sounds, I don't think Weapon's a huge upgrade here for Discipline Priest over Constellus. And that should be something you definitely have by now. Drops off of Algalon and Hodir. And a lot of classes don't necessarily want it because of that MP5 on it. So for the Offhand, this is something I'm a bit bitter about. I'm still using the little lantern thing you get from Naxxramas. Just haven't gotten lucky with some of the drops like Ironmender, Cosmos, and honestly Cosmos shouldn't be going to a Discipline Priest first. It is technically our BIS during Ulduar, with that super high spell power value, especially compared to other pieces. But it does have hit on it, so it's obviously going to be prior to other people who could actually utilize that. The Chalice, though, will also be sadly prioritized by classes like Demo Lock and Mages due to a crit and spirit on it. It does have more spell power, though, and has a really nice amount of stamina and intellect on it. If you can get it, go for it. But again, if you already have something like Ironmender or Cosmos, it is going to be a nice spell power increase, so get it if you can. But if it's in a prioritization guild, you're probably not getting it early on. And then lastly, we got Wands. Honestly, this kind of sounds stupid, but the 10-man heroic item off of Freya, the Petrified Ivy Spring, is honestly better than the Rod of Imprisoned Souls. You're going to get a ton more spell power, especially with that socket you're going to throw in there. You're gaining, obviously, a little bit of stamina and intellect, not enough to really make a big difference here. It is better optimized with crit or haste rating on the Rod of Imprisoned Souls. But honestly, it's kind of a wash, even a slight downgrade, because again, we prioritize spell power over everything else. If you do have something like Scepter of the Lost Souls or something from Nax still for whatever reason, definitely could go run Ulduar, get that 10-man thing, or go do the heroic plus pluses. You can get that Petrified Ivy Spring in there. That's one less piece of gear you're going to have to worry about. Okay, so lastly, we got some general tips and advice for prioring items in this phase. Because people are going to be spread out due to the nature of Ulduar, due to some groups taking a while to start clearing some hard modes, and others just getting crap luck with drops, most priests are going to have very different sets of gear going to TOGC. Because of that, I would highly recommend looking at this list and seeing which items are the biggest upgrade for you. As a general note, look for the biggest spell power and item level upgrades for obvious reasons. Spell power is the best stat for you, as haste over 154 won't be used while spamming Power Word Shield, and crit has uses, but it's limited in terms of Divine Aegis procs and just general healing. I'd also say to focus on getting rid of Spirit and obviously hit pieces if you have any, as those are wasted stats. If you're someone who didn't get a lot of the 10-man hard mode Ulduar loot, you can also go and get some of those pieces by running the new heroic plus pluses and converting emblems to acquire it. Realistically, you should only be getting a few pieces from this, but it can still help your output and help your guild clear Heroic Anub earlier, and also save some lives and potential wipes, leading to getting those cloaks unlocked. For some notes on what I've been prioritizing, and just a general note, the cloak is obviously one of the biggest upgrades due to its high item level. If you have a lot of other gear already and are in a loot council guild, don't roll need or upgrade on many of the other things to artificially push out your time since your last piece of loot. It might help you get prioed for it. I really like the sustained Trinket Solace, as it's a direct upgrade to Show of Faith and will allow you to drop MP5 gear elsewhere in favor of the other throughput pieces or pieces with crit or haste. And as a reminder, feel free to roll for one piece of tier, just don't expect to get it super early, as other classes actually want their full TOGC sets, and it will likely, and rightfully so, be prioed over you. I would also not bother using the emblems for weaker variants, it would only be a modest stat increase. Okay, that's all I got. Again, I've shared the document in the description and pinned comment, so feel free to check it out for reference. I spent a good amount of time researching pieces and putting this all together, so if you enjoyed it and want to show a little love, just hit that subscribe button for me. I'll be posting some video guides on how to optimize Disc Priest spell usage for each boss, as well as an overall healing guide for TOGC in the coming days. So if you want to see that content, make sure to hit the button and the bell. Alright guys, take care. See you next time.